I should have known something was off the moment Jude asked me if I'd ever thought about switching sides. The thing is, Jude doesn't joke about stuff like that. He jokes about everything else: my terrible taste in music, my inability to cook anything that isn't pasta, the fact that I once cried over a dog commercial, but not that. And Jude is straight. Or at least, he's always been straight. We've been friends since sophomore year of college. Same dorm floor, same early morning econ class. Both of us half asleep and hungover most of the time. He was the loud one, confident, always surrounded by people. I was more low-key. We clicked anyway. Late-night study sessions turned into late-night beer runs, which turned into a friendship that just stuck. After graduation, we ended up in the same city. Rent was insane, so we decided to split a 2-bedroom apartment. It made sense. We already knew each other's habits. He knew I needed silence when I worked. I knew he needed background noise 24/7 or he'd lose his mind. For 2 years, it was easy, comfortable. Jude dated girls constantly. Blonde yoga instructor, tattooed bartender, a finance girl who wore blazers even on weekends. I'd listen to his stories, give half-serious advice, pretend my stomach didn't twist every time he described how insane the chemistry was. Because yeah, I've been into him since college. I never planned to do anything about it. He was my best friend. Straight. Off limits. End of story. Except about a month ago, something shifted. It started small. We were at the gym together, like we usually are on Thursdays. He was spotting me on bench press, standing just behind my head. I racked the bar and sat up, and when I turned, he was closer than I expected. Like, really close. Instead of stepping back, he just stayed there. "You've been working out more?" he asked, eyes scanning down my chest. I laughed it off. "You're the one dragging me here every week." "Yeah, but it's paying off," he said, and there was something in his tone I couldn't quite place. Not teasing, not casual either. He clapped my shoulder, but his hand lingered a second too long. I told myself I was imagining it. A few days later, we were on the couch watching some trashy reality show. Jude had his feet up on the coffee table. I was half curled into the corner. At some point, he stretched and his hand landed on my thigh. Not like an accidental brush. It just rested there. I froze. My brain short-circuited. His palm was warm, heavy, solid. He kept talking about the show like nothing was happening. I waited for him to move it. He didn't. After maybe 10 seconds, though it felt like a full minute, he finally pulled back, scratching his beard like it was absent-minded. I barely slept that night. Then came the questions. The first one was almost subtle. We were in the kitchen, making dinner. Well, I was making dinner. Jude was leaning against the counter, supervising, which basically means stealing pieces of chicken off the cutting board. Out of nowhere, he said, "Can I ask you something kind of random? Since when has that ever stopped you?" He smirked, but it faded fast. "When did you know?" I didn't need clarification. I still pretended I did. "Know what?" "That you were into guys." The knife paused mid-slice. My heart started pounding so loud I was sure he could hear it. "I don't know," I said carefully. "High school, I guess." He nodded slowly, like he was filing that away. "Was it obvious?" "Like to you?" "Yeah, pretty obvious." Another nod. He looked thoughtful. Too thoughtful. Then he grabbed another piece of chicken and changed the subject. That should have been the end of it. Curiosity, maybe. He said gay friends before. Maybe he was just trying to understand me better. But it didn't stop there. Over the next week, the questions got weirder. "Do you ever wish you weren't?" "Weren't what?" "Gay." That one hit harder than I expected. "Not really," I said. "It's just me." He stared at the wall when I said that. Not at me. At the wall. Another night, after a couple beers, he asked, "Do you think it's possible for someone to be, like, mostly straight?" I forced a laugh. "You asking for a friend?" He didn't laugh back. "I'm serious." I set my bottle down. "Yeah. Identity isn't always black and white." He swallowed. I watched his throat move. "And how would someone know?" he asked quietly. I wanted to say, "If you have to ask, you probably already know." Instead, I shrugged. "You feel it." Silence stretched between us. Heavy. Loaded. He looked at me, then really looked at me, and I swear there was something vulnerable in his expression. Not the confident, cocky Jude everyone else saw. Something almost scared. But before I could say anything else, his phone buzzed. A girl's name lit up the screen. He grabbed it like a lifeline and answered immediately, stepping out onto the balcony. I sat there alone, staring at the half-empty beer in my hand, my pulse still racing. I told myself not to read into it. But then, 3 nights ago, he knocked on my bedroom door at 1 a.m. And everything changed. I was half asleep, laptop still open beside me. Yeah, I mumbled. The door creaked open, and Jude stepped inside. Shirtless. That wasn't unusual. He walks around like that all the time. What was unusual was the look on his face. Serious. Nervous. Can we talk? He asked. At 1 in the morning. My stomach dropped. Sure, I said, pushing myself up against the headboard. What's up? He shut the door behind him and locked it. That's when I realized this wasn't just curiosity anymore. Something was about to come out. When Jude locked my bedroom door, my brain immediately jumped to worst-case scenarios. Someone died. He got someone pregnant. He's in trouble. But the look on his face didn't match any of those. He looked exposed, like he'd already said something out loud in his head and couldn't take it back. He stayed standing for a second, hand still resting on the lock. Why'd you lock it? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. So we don't get interrupted, he said. By who? We were the only ones there. Okay. I shifted, suddenly hyper-aware that I was sitting in bed in old sweats and a thin t-shirt. You're kind of freaking me out. He exhaled a shaky laugh. Yeah, I'm freaking myself out too. That did absolutely nothing to calm me down. He finally moved, dragging my desk chair closer to the bed. But instead of sitting back casually like he usually would, he leaned forward, elbows on his knees. Hands clasped. Nervous posture. I'd never seen him like that. You remember what we were talking about the other night? He asked. About what? He looked up at me. About someone being mostly straight. My throat went dry. Yeah. He nodded slowly, like he was building up to something. I've been thinking about that. I didn't say anything. I didn't trust my voice. He ran a hand through his hair. I've always liked girls. That's not fake. It's not like I've been lying or something. I never thought you were, I said quickly. But lately, he hesitated. My heart was beating so hard it actually hurt. But lately what? His jaw tightened. I don't know what's happening to me. The room felt smaller. What do you mean? I asked softer now. He swallowed. I keep noticing things. What things? You. That single word knocked the air out of me. I stared at him, trying to figure out if I'd misheard. Me? I repeated. Yeah. His eyes were locked on mine now. No joking, no smirk to soften it. The way you laugh. The way you look when you're focused on something. The way you dash. He cut himself off and looked away. It's stupid. It's not stupid, I said automatically, even though my brain was still catching up. He stood up abruptly and started pacing my room. I don't get it, Caden, he said. I've never looked at a guy like that before. Looked at a guy like what? Like what? I forced myself to ask. He stopped pacing. Like I want to touch him. Silence. Complete, deafening silence. I could feel heat flooding my face, my chest, everywhere. You're drunk, I said weakly. I'm not drunk. He wasn't. I could tell. His voice was clear, steady, even if it was strained. This isn't funny, I added. I'm not joking. His tone was sharp now, almost defensive. I've been trying to ignore it, he continued. I thought it was just curiosity or something. But it's not going away. He looked at me again, and there was something raw in his expression, something almost desperate. When I put my hand on your leg the other night, he said quietly, I didn't do that by accident. My stomach flipped so hard I thought I might actually throw up. You didn't move it, he added. I couldn't breathe. I didn't know what to do, I admitted. Did you want me to move it? That question. God. I opened my mouth, then closed it again. My brain was screaming at me to be careful. This was my best friend. This could destroy everything. But the truth was sitting right there between us. No, I said. His breath hitched. He stepped closer to the bed. And at the gym, he went on, voice lower now, when I was standing behind you. I wasn't just spotting you. I remembered that moment. How close he'd been. How my skin had felt like it was on fire. I know, I said quietly. His eyes flicked over my face like he was searching for something. Permission. Rejection. Anything. I don't know what this makes me, he said. I don't know if this is a phase or if I'm losing my mind. But I can't stop thinking about you. My chest tightened. You don't have to label it, I said. You don't have to decide anything right now. He let out a shaky breath. That's the thing. I don't just want to think about it anymore. The air shifted. My pulse started racing all over again. What do you mean? I asked, even though I already knew. He was close enough now that I could see the faint stubble along his jaw, the rise and fall of his chest. I want to know, he said. If this is real. How? His voice dropped. By finding out what happens if I kiss you. Everything in my body went still. There it was. No ambiguity. No, mostly straight. No hypothetical friend. Just him. Asking. You're sure? I whispered. He nodded once. I'm terrified, he admitted. Me too. He gave a small, nervous smile at that. For a second, neither of us moved. It felt like standing at the edge of something massive, knowing once you stepped forward, there was no going back. And then he did it. He reached out, slowly, like I might bolt. His fingers brushed my cheek first. Testing. I didn't pull away. His thumb traced along my jaw. Gentle. Almost reverent. You can stop me, he murmured. I'm not going to. That was all the confirmation he needed. He leaned in. And when his lips finally touched mine, everything I thought I knew about our friendship shattered in the best possible way. Because this wasn't hesitant curiosity. It wasn't sloppy or unsure. It was hungry, like he'd been holding it in for weeks. And the second I kissed him back, I felt him exhale against my mouth like he'd just been given permission to finally stop fighting himself. His hands moved to my waist, gripping tighter than I expected. And that's when I realized this wasn't just a question anymore. This was about to change everything. The first thing I noticed was how warm Jude was. Not just physically, but the way he kissed like he meant it. Like he wasn't testing the waters anymore, but stepping straight into them. For a second, I forgot how to breathe. His lips moved against mine in a way that was both unfamiliar and somehow natural, like we'd skipped 100 smaller moments and landed here instead. My hands hovered awkwardly at first, unsure where they belonged. Friends don't have muscle memory for this. But Jude did. He slid one hand behind my neck, pulling me closer, and the quiet sound that left him wasn't confident or cocky. It was relieved. That's what broke my hesitation. I kissed him back fully then, my hands settling at his sides, feeling the steady rise and fall of his breathing under my palms. He was tense, but leaning in, like he was scared I might disappear if he loosened his grip. After a few seconds or minutes, time felt weird. He pulled back just enough for our foreheads to rest together. Okay, he breathed. I let out a shaky laugh. Okay. That was. He exhaled again. Eyes still closed. Not what I expected. My stomach flipped. Bad, not what you expected? His eyes opened immediately. No. God, no. Relief flooded through me so fast, it almost made me dizzy. It was just, he searched for words. Loud. In my head. Loud. Yeah. Like everything suddenly makes sense, but also nothing does. I smiled softly. Welcome to the club. That made him laugh, the familiar sound easing some of the intensity in the room. But neither of us moved away. His hand was still at the back of my neck. Mine were still resting against his ribs. The air between us felt fragile, like one wrong move could snap whatever this was. Did you ever think this would happen? He asked quietly. With you? I shook my head. Not in real life. His expression shifted at that. You thought about it, though. It wasn't a question. I hesitated, then nodded once. Yeah. How often? I groaned, dropping my forehead against his shoulder. That's an unfair follow-up question. He chuckled softly, fingers absent-mindedly tracing along my jaw. I'm serious, he murmured. I want to know. There was no teasing in his voice. Just curiosity. Vulnerability. Sometimes, I admitted. Mostly when you do something that felt different. Like what? I pulled back enough to look at him. You remember freshman year when you fell asleep on my shoulder during that movie marathon? He blinked. Yeah. You held my hand in your sleep. His eyebrows shot up. I did not. You did. That's mortifying. It wasn't, I said softly. He went quiet at that. And lately? He asked after a moment. I swallowed. Lately it's been harder not to think about. His gaze dropped to my mouth, then flicked back up. Same, he said. That single word carried so much weight. We sat there in silence again, but it wasn't uncomfortable. It felt like standing in a room after a storm, everything still, the air different. I'm scared I'm going to mess this up, he admitted suddenly. You can't mess up a feeling, I said. I can mess up us. That hit deeper, because that fear lived in me too. This wasn't just some random crush. This was Jude. Movie nights, road trips, inside jokes. The person I called when anything good or bad happened. You won't lose me, I said quietly. You don't know that. I do. He studied my face like he was trying to memorize something. You're being really calm about this, he said. I'm not calm. I laughed. My heart's been doing parkour for the last 10 minutes. That finally got a full smile out of him. I keep replaying the kiss, he admitted. Like, I want to do it again just to make sure it wasn't a fluke. I raised an eyebrow. Scientific method? Exactly. I rolled my eyes, but I was smiling. You're such an idiot. You're idiot. The words slipped out casually, but the moment they did, his expression changed. Softer. More aware. Neither of us joked after that. Can I? He asked quietly. I didn't make him finish the question. I leaned in first this time. The second kiss was slower. Less shock, more intention. His hands settled at my waist, not gripping now, just holding. Mine rested against his shoulders, feeling the tension gradually melt from them. It felt less like crossing a line and more like uncovering something that had been sitting under the surface for years. When we pulled apart, Jude stayed close, nose brushing mine. I don't feel confused right now, he said. What do you feel? He thought for a second. Right, he answered. That word settled somewhere deep in my chest. But then reality crept back in. We don't have to figure everything out tonight, I said. He nodded immediately. Good. Because my brain is fried. I laughed softly. Same. He hesitated, then gestured toward the bed. Can I just stay for a bit? Yeah. He kicked off his shorts and climbed in beside me like we'd done 100 times during movie nights or hangovers. But this was different. The awareness was there, humming quietly between us. We lay on our sides facing each other. Close, but not touching. Is this weird? He asked. A little. Yeah. A beat passed. Then he reached forward and took my hand. Simple. Gentle. No hesitation this time. And somehow, that felt even more intimate than the kiss. We stayed like that, fingers intertwined, the room quiet except for our breathing. After a while, Jude spoke again, voice barely above a whisper. I think I've been asking those questions because part of me already knew. I squeezed his hand. I was just waiting for you to catch up, I said. He smiled, eyes half-lidded. Thank you for not freaking out. Thank you for locking my door, I replied. He laughed softly. But as we lay there in the quiet, hand in hand, I couldn't shake the feeling that tonight was only the beginning. Because kissing your straight best friend is one thing. Figuring out what happens the morning after? That's where the real story starts. I woke up before my alarm, which never happens. For a few seconds, I didn't know why. My room was still dim, pale winter light barely slipping through the blinds. Everything felt normal. Then I felt the weight. Jude's hand was still wrapped around mine. The memory of last night hit all at once, his voice, the questions, the kiss, the way he'd looked at me like he was seeing something new and terrifying and exciting all at the same time. I stayed still, watching him sleep. He was lying on his side, hair messy, mouth slightly parted, completely relaxed in a way I rarely saw when he was awake. Usually there was this constant energy about him, like he was always performing a little for the world. But right now he just looked like Jude. My Jude. That thought alone made my chest tighten. I carefully shifted, trying not to wake him, but his grip tightened instantly. He mumbled, eyes still closed. Don't go. The softness of his voice made something melt in me. I'm not going anywhere, I whispered. His eyes opened slowly, confusion flickering for a second before recognition settled in. Oh, he breathed. Yeah. Silence stretched between us, not awkward, just loaded. You're still here, he said. You're in my bed. He huffed a quiet laugh. Right. Details. But I could see the nerves creeping back in. The daylight made everything real in a different way. Night had given us privacy, a bubble where emotions could spill out without consequences. Morning brought context. So, he started, then stopped. So I echoed. He rubbed his face with his free hand, then looked at me again. That happened. It did. And you didn't kick me out after. Nope. He studied me for a moment, like he was searching for signs of regret. Do you regret it? He asked quietly. The question landed heavier than I expected. No, I said immediately. Relief washed across his face so fast, it was almost painful to watch. Me neither, he admitted. We lay there another minute, neither of us moving, fingers still intertwined, like letting go might undo everything. Eventually, Jude groaned. I have to pee so bad. I laughed. Romantic. Extremely. He slipped out of bed and padded down the hallway, leaving me staring at the ceiling, heart racing all over again. Because last night was one thing, but now we had to exist in the same space where we'd always just been friends. I heard the bathroom door open, then the kitchen cabinets. A minute later, the smell of coffee drifted down the hall. Normal life continuing around something that felt anything but normal. When I walked into the kitchen, Jude was leaning against the counter with 2 mugs. He handed one to me without a word. Peace offering? I asked. For making your brain explode at 1 a.m. I smiled. Accepted. We stood there sipping coffee, shoulder to shoulder, but not touching. The distance felt intentional, cautious. So what now? He asked eventually. I appreciated that he didn't pretend nothing had happened. We don't have to decide everything today, I said. He nodded. Good. Because I keep oscillating between calm and holy shit. Same. A small smile tugged at his mouth. But I know one thing, he added. What? I don't want to pretend it didn't happen. That mattered more than he probably realized. Me neither. He tapped his mug against mine lightly, like a quiet agreement. Another pause. Then he said, Can I ask something without you overthinking it? That depends on the question. He smirked faintly. Do you feel weird around me right now? I considered it. Yes, I admitted. But not in a bad way. Yeah, he said. It feels like standing somewhere familiar, but noticing new doors. That's oddly poetic for you. Don't tell anyone. I laughed, and some of the tension dissolved. A moment later, his phone buzzed on the counter. A girl's name flashed across the screen. We both saw it. He didn't pick it up. Instead, he flipped the phone face down. That's new, I said. He shrugged, a little sheepish. I don't feel like talking to anyone else right now. The words settled warmly in my chest. We finished our coffee in comfortable silence, but the energy between us had shifted again, less explosive than last night, more steady. Real. Jude set his mug in the sink, then lingered there, like he was debating something. What? I asked. He turned back to me. I keep wanting to touch you, he said, voice quiet but matter of fact. Not like, intensely, just small stuff. My pulse picked up anyway. That's allowed, I said. He stepped closer, slow enough that I could see the decision happening in real time. His fingers brushed mine first. Then he linked them together. Simple. But this time, it wasn't secret or late night or hidden in my bedroom. It was morning. Kitchen. Sunlight. Real life. Still feels right, he murmured. I squeezed his hand. Yeah, I said. He looked at me for a long second, something thoughtful settling behind his eyes. You know what's weird? He said. What? I spent weeks asking questions when what I really wanted. He trailed off. What? His thumb brushed across my knuckles. Was just this. And standing there in our messy kitchen, hands intertwined, coffee mugs still warm in the sink, I realized the strange questions hadn't been the beginning of something confusing. They'd been the beginning of him finding his way to me. But what neither of us knew yet was how the rest of the world would react once this stopped being just ours. For the next few days, Jude and I existed in this quiet, fragile middle ground. Nothing dramatic changed on the outside. We still woke up late on weekends, still argued over whose turn it was to buy groceries, still sat on opposite ends of the couch watching dumb shows. But underneath all of it, something had shifted. It showed up in small ways. His hand brushing mine when we passed each other in the hallway, not accidental anymore. The way he'd lean against my doorframe while I worked, just watching me for a second before saying whatever he came in to say. How we started sitting closer on the couch until closer eventually meant our knees touching, then shoulders, then his arm draped lazily behind me. None of it was rushed, but none of it was platonic either. And the strangest part? It felt normal, like we were slowly uncovering a version of our friendship that had always been there, just buried under assumptions. Thursday night, we ordered takeout and ended up on the balcony, wrapped in hoodies against the cold. The city hummed below us, traffic, distant laughter, someone playing music too loudly from another building. Jude sat sideways in his chair, one leg draped over the arm, facing me. You've been very chill about this, he said suddenly. I raised an eyebrow. You've said that already. I know, but it keeps surprising me. Why? He shrugged, gaze drifting to the streetlights. I thought you'd expect something from me. Like what? A label? A plan? A timeline? I laughed softly. Jude, you just questioned your entire identity last week. I'm not handing you homework. That made him smile, but it faded into something more thoughtful. I appreciate that, he said. We sat in comfortable silence for a minute. Then he added, quieter, but I also don't want you to feel like you're waiting around for me. That landed deeper than I expected. I'm not waiting, I said. I'm just here. His eyes lifted to mine. And what if I'm slow? He asked. You always are, I teased. He snorted. I'm serious. So am I. The sincerity between us felt heavy in the best way. Jude leaned forward, elbows on his knees. I keep replaying stuff from the past. Like what? Moments that felt random at the time, but don't anymore. My heart skipped. Like when? I asked. He smiled faintly. Sophomore year. That road trip to the lake. I blinked. You remember that? I remember waking up in the back seat, and you were asleep on my shoulder. That's not exactly groundbreaking. You were holding my arm, he said. I frowned. I was asleep. I know, but I didn't move it for like an hour. The image hit me with unexpected clarity. Sunlight through the car windows, the hum of tires on asphalt, the quiet comfort of being close to him. Why didn't you move? I asked softly. He held my gaze. Because I liked it. The air between us went still. Jude leaned back again, exhaling slowly. There are a lot of moments like that. I swallowed. Yeah, there are. A beat passed. Then he said, almost shyly, can I sit with you? I gestured to the empty chair beside mine. You live here. Smartass. But he moved his chair anyway, sliding it closer until our knees bumped. Neither of us pulled away. The city noise faded into background static as we sat there, shoulder to shoulder. I told my sister, he said suddenly. My head snapped toward him. You what? Not everything, he added quickly. Just that I'm confused. How'd she react? He smiled a little. She said, about time you questioned something. I laughed. I like her. Same. He nudged my knee with his. But she also said something else. What? That the person you figure yourself out with matters. My chest tightened. And? I asked. He turned his head toward me fully now. I'm glad it's you. It wasn't dramatic. He didn't say it like a confession. Just a quiet truth. I didn't trust my voice, so I reached for his hand instead. He intertwined our fingers instantly, like it was becoming second nature. We stayed like that, watching headlights trace lines down the street below. After a while, Jude spoke again. I have another weird question. I smiled. Of course you do. If we weren't friends first, do you think you would have liked me? I laughed softly. That is the least weird question you've asked. And yes, I said, annoyingly fast. He grinned. Good. Why? Because I liked you too, he admitted. I stared at him. What? Not consciously, he said quickly. But you were always my favorite person to be around. I just didn't interrogate that feeling. That's one way to put it. He squeezed my hand. I'm interrogating now. The honesty in that made my chest ache in a warm, complicated way. We sat there until the cold forced us back inside. As we stepped into the living room, Jude hesitated. What? I asked. He shifted his weight, suddenly looking unsure again. Is it okay if I kiss you? He asked. The fact that he still asked, even now, melted me. Yeah, I said. The kiss was soft, familiar already, but still carrying that spark of disbelief. When we pulled apart, he rested his forehead against mine for a second. I don't feel like I'm losing anything, he murmured. What do you feel like? He smiled. Like I'm finding something. And as we stood there in the quiet apartment that had held years of friendship, I realized the strange questions hadn't stopped. They just changed. Because now the question wasn't what are we doing? It was, how far are we willing to go once we stop being afraid of the answer? The first time someone else almost noticed, it caught me completely off guard. It was a Saturday afternoon, the kind where nothing important is happening, but somehow the day disappears anyway. Jude had convinced me to go grocery shopping with him mostly because he claimed I bought food like a recently divorced dad. We were in the cereal aisle debating granola like it was a life or death decision. This one has more protein, Jude said, holding up a box. This one tastes like cardboard, I replied. He smirked. You've tasted cardboard? I lived in a dorm with you. Same thing. He laughed, bumping his shoulder into mine. It was automatic now. The casual touches, the shared space, the ease of being physically close. So automatic that sometimes I forgot we were technically doing something new. Until moments like this. Because when I glanced up, a girl about our age was staring at us from the end of the aisle. Not in a judgmental way. Just observant. I felt a flicker of awareness shoot through me. Jude didn't notice. Or maybe he did, because a second later he grabbed the granola box and tossed it into the cart like the decision had been made. Come on, he said, steering the cart forward. We walked past her, and I caught the faintest hint of a smile on her face, like she'd seen something soft and familiar. It shouldn't have mattered, but it did. In the parking lot, as we loaded bags into the trunk, Jude said, You went quiet. I leaned against the car. Do you ever think about people noticing? He paused mid-bag. Yeah, he said honestly. And he shut the trunk and turned to me. It scares me a little, he admitted. But not as much as pretending this isn't happening. That answer stayed with me the whole drive home. Later that night, we ended up on the couch again. Some action movie played in the background, explosions lighting up the screen while neither of us paid attention. Jude was stretched out, head resting against the back cushion, while I sat sideways beside him. At some point, his fingers found mine. It happened so naturally that we didn't even look at each other, just intertwined hands resting between us. You know what's funny? He said after a while. What? I thought this would feel like this huge dramatic shift. And it feels like upgrading something that was already good. I smiled. That's a very Jude way to describe emotions. Hey, metaphors are hard. We sat in comfortable quiet for a minute. Then he added, softer. I keep waiting for it to feel wrong. My chest tightened slightly. But it doesn't, he finished. I turned toward him. It doesn't for me either. He studied my face, eyes lingering like he was still getting used to being allowed to look this way. I told my sister more, he said. Oh, yeah. She asked if I like you. My pulse jumped. And he smiled faintly. I said yes. The simplicity of it knocked the air from my lungs. What did she say? I asked. She said I sounded happier. That hit somewhere deep. Jude shifted, turning fully toward me now. I am happier, he admitted. Silence wrapped around us again, but it felt warm instead of heavy. Are you? He asked. Yeah, I said, but also terrified. He laughed softly. Good. Same page. A beat passed. Then he said, can I tell you something embarrassing? Always. The night I knocked on your door. I almost didn't. I blinked. Why? Because I thought you'd laugh. Or worse, look uncomfortable. The idea felt impossible now. I wouldn't have, I said. I know that now. His thumb brushed over my knuckles. I was sitting in my room for like 20 minutes rehearsing what to say, he admitted. I grinned. What was the first draft? He groaned. It was terrible. Something like, hypothetically, if a straight guy. I burst out laughing. Shut up, he said, laughing too. You're lucky I improved. I'm very grateful you skipped the hypothetical phase. His laughter faded into something softer. I'm glad I knocked, he said. Me too. The movie credits started rolling, unnoticed. Jude shifted closer until our shoulders pressed together, his head tilting slightly toward mine. You know what I realized today, he said. What? That all those questions I asked, they weren't really about identity. No, they were about whether you'd still want me if I changed. My heart squeezed. I wanted you before you changed, I said quietly. His expression softened in a way that made the room feel smaller. Good, he murmured. We sat there for a long time, not talking, just existing in that quiet closeness. Eventually, Jude spoke again. I think the hardest part isn't figuring out what I feel, he said. What is it? Letting myself feel it without analyzing every second. That takes practice. He smiled faintly. You offering coaching? Lifetime subscription. That earned me a quiet laugh. Jude looked at me for a moment, thoughtful, like he was about to say something bigger. But instead, he just leaned his head gently against mine. No urgency. No questions. Just closeness. And as we sat there, tangled in the familiar comfort of friendship and the new warmth of something more, I realized the questions hadn't disappeared. But they didn't feel scary anymore. Because for the first time, we weren't trying to answer them alone. And neither of us knew yet that the next question wouldn't come from Jude. It would come from someone who'd known him long before I did. It happened the following Sunday. Jude had mentioned earlier in the week that he was grabbing lunch with his sister, Maya. Nothing unusual, they were close. She lived across town, worked in marketing, and had a habit of seeing through him in ways that were both impressive and terrifying. You should come sometime, he'd said casually. I'd shrugged it off. Let's survive phase 1 first. He didn't push it. But that Sunday afternoon, I was halfway through folding laundry when the apartment door opened harder than usual. Hey, I called from my room. No answer. A second later, Jude appeared in my doorway. He wasn't upset, but he wasn't calm either. He looked charged. What happened? I asked immediately. He leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed, like he was replaying something in his head. She wants to meet you. My stomach dropped. Maya. Yeah. I blinked. Why? He gave me a look. Because I told her I like you. The words still made my pulse jump every time he said them so plainly. And I asked carefully. And she asked what you're like. That's normal. And then she said, I need to see if he's good enough for you. I couldn't help it. I laughed. Oh, great. A formal inspection. Jude didn't laugh. She wasn't joking. That's when I noticed the tension in his shoulders. Hey, I said, standing up. Is that what this is about? He exhaled sharply. She's protective. That's not a bad thing. I know. But this is already new for me. And now it feels like it's under a microscope. I stepped closer to him. Do you want me to meet her? I asked. He hesitated. That's the thing, he admitted. I don't know if I'm ready for this to be that real. The honesty in that stung a little, even though I understood it. You don't have to rush, I said. He looked at me, searching. But I don't want to hide you either, he added quickly. That softened something in my chest. I'm not something you hide, I said gently. But I'm also not something you're forced to announce. He ran a hand through his hair, his tell when he's overwhelmed. I just figured this out, he said. I don't even know what I am yet. You're you, I replied. That's enough for now. He studied me for a long second. You make this feel simple, he said. It's not simple, I corrected. It's just honest. Silence stretched between us. Then he surprised me. She asked if you're good to me. My heart skipped. What did you say? I said yeah. I swallowed. That's it. He shook his head slowly. I said you've always been good to me. That hit deeper than I expected. We'd built years on that foundation before anything romantic entered the picture. That matters to her, he continued. That this isn't some random guy. I nodded. It's not, I said quietly. He stepped closer then, closing the distance without hesitation. She also asked if I'm good to you. That one caught me off guard. And he didn't answer right away. Instead, he reached for my hand. I want to be, he said. The vulnerability in his voice was heavier than any of the earlier questions about identity. This wasn't about labels. It was about responsibility. You are, I said softly. He squeezed my hand, but I could feel something still unsettled beneath the surface. What are you not saying? I asked. He hesitated. She asked what happens if I panic. I went still. And I asked carefully, and I didn't know how to answer. There it was. The fear. Not of kissing me, not of liking me, but of what happens if the pressure builds, family, friends, expectations, and he feels overwhelmed. Do you think you'll panic? I asked quietly. I don't know, he admitted. I've never done something like this before. This isn't a cliff jump, I said gently. It's just us, day by day. He exhaled slowly. But if I did panic, he continued, voice tight, I don't want to hurt you. The honesty in that made my chest ache. You're not responsible for never feeling overwhelmed, I said. You're responsible for not disappearing when you do. He held my gaze. I wouldn't disappear, he said. It wasn't defensive. It was a promise. A quiet one. I stepped closer until there was barely space between us. Then we'll be fine, I said. For a moment, he just stood there, looking at me like he was weighing something important. Then he leaned in and kissed me, not urgently, not nervously. Steady, grounded. When he pulled back, his forehead rested against mine. I don't want to hide you, he repeated softly. You don't have to. He nodded once, decision settling into his posture. I'll tell her she can meet you, he said. My heart jumped again. You sure? He smiled faintly. No, but I'm also not sure about anything lately. That's kind of your brand right now. He huffed a laugh. Then his expression turned serious again. I just know one thing, he said. What's that? I don't want to step backward. And standing there in my bedroom, laundry half folded, sunlight cutting across the floor, I realized something important. The strange questions had led to kisses. The kisses had led to honesty. And now the honesty was leading to something bigger. Not just between us, but out loud. Because once you let someone else see what you're building, you can't pretend it's temporary anymore. And I had a feeling Maya wasn't the only one who was about to start asking questions. I met Maya the next Friday. Jude pretended he wasn't nervous. I could tell he was. He changed shirts 3 times before we left. Not because he wanted to look good. He always looks good. But because he kept tugging at the collar like it didn't sit right. You've met her before, he reminded me while we stood outside the restaurant. Yeah, as your roommate. He nodded. This is slightly different. Is it? I asked, watching him carefully. He hesitated. Yeah, he admitted. And that was the thing. Up until now, what we had lived mostly inside our apartment. Inside soft conversations and quiet touches and late-night honesty. It had been intimate, real, but contained. Tonight made it visible. Maya was already seated when we walked in. She stood the second she saw us. Her eyes flicked to Jude first, quick assessment, then to me. I braced myself. Instead, she smiled. "So you're Caden," she said. "I am." She stepped forward and hugged me. Not a polite side hug, a real one. When she pulled back, she glanced between us. "Okay," she said simply. "Okay," Jude echoed. She smirked. "Relax. You both look like you're about to defend a thesis." Jude exhaled sharply, shoulders dropping an inch. Dinner was surprisingly normal. We talked about work, about childhood stories Jude definitely did not want shared, about the time he broke his wrist trying to skateboard down a hill he swore he could handle. But underneath it, I could feel her observing, not judging, watching. At one point, Jude got up to grab more drinks. The second he was out of earshot, Maya leaned slightly toward me. "Can I ask you something?" she said. "Of course. Is he steady with you?" The question was quiet, direct. I didn't rush my answer. "Yes," I said honestly. "He is." She studied my face for a second. "And are you steady with him?" "Yes." That seemed to settle something in her. "He's been restless his whole life," she said. "Confident on the outside, but constantly questioning himself when it matters." I smiled faintly. "Yeah, I've noticed." Her expression softened. "He's different lately," she said. "Calmer." That did something to me. "In a good way?" I asked. "In a real way," Jude returned then, sliding back into his seat, suspicious eyes bouncing between us. "What did I miss?" he asked. "Nothing," Maya and I said at the same time. He narrowed his eyes. Dinner ended without drama. No heavy confrontation. No awkward declarations. But as we stood outside afterward, Maya hugged Jude tightly. Then she looked at both of us. "Don't overthink this to death," she said to him. He groaned. "You too." "Yes, me too." Then she turned to me. "Take care of him," she said softly. "I will," I replied. And I meant it. On the drive home, Jude was quiet. Not anxious. Just thoughtful. "You okay?" I asked. He nodded slowly. "Yeah." A pause. "She likes you," he added. "That's a relief." He huffed a small laugh. "It's weird," he said after a minute. "Sitting there with you. Not hiding anything. How did it feel?" He thought about it. Grounded. That word again. When we got home, neither of us rushed inside. We stood by the car for a second under the dim parking lot light. "I kept waiting for something to feel off," he admitted. And it didn't. I stepped closer. "You know what that means?" I asked. He looked at me. "It means this isn't some temporary spiral." The air between us felt different tonight. Not fragile like the first kiss. Not cautious like the mornings after. Steady. Earned. Jude reached for my hand. Out in the open parking lot. Not hidden in an apartment hallway. No hesitation. "I think I finally understand what I was asking all those weird questions for," he said. "Yeah. I wasn't trying to figure out if I liked guys." He squeezed my hand. "I was trying to figure out if I could let myself like you." The honesty in that hit harder than anything else had. "And?" I asked quietly. He stepped closer until there was barely space between us. "I can," he said. No grand speech. No dramatic confession. Just that. And as he leaned in and kissed me, slow, certain, unafraid, I realized something important. The strange questions weren't about identity. They were about permission. Permission to feel something unexpected. Permission to risk something real. Permission to choose me. When he pulled back, his forehead rested against mine like it had so many times before. "I don't know what label fits," he said softly. "I don't care," I replied. He smiled. "Good." Because standing there, under a flickering parking lot light, fingers intertwined in a way that felt entirely natural. Labels felt small. What we had wasn't confusion anymore. It wasn't curiosity. It wasn't even just friendship evolving. It was two people who had known each other for years finally admitting that the comfort they'd always had grown into something deeper. And the best part? There were no more strange questions. Just one quiet certainty. He chose me. And this time, he wasn't second-guessing it.